Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on April the 9th, 2025. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout. I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Hey, Robert. Good. I'm here in Midtown Atlanta. I'm doing this recording remote today. I'm at an alts conference, so it's good to connect. We were just talking before we went live. The market had quite a big day today to the upside. We find ourselves, digesting more announcements. In this case, I guess a positive reaction from the market with Trump's delay of some of the tariffs.
Yeah, just kind of a bit of a 90-day, I guess, reprieve of sorts. Let's allow some negotiations to happen. It seems like applying to most countries. I think Canada and Mexico and maybe China.
You've probably been up to more interesting things than following the tariffs in the news, but I know that the Masters is this week in Atlanta. There's a rumor somebody might be there that's on this.
Podcast. I'm excited about
not named Andres.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm looking forward to going. It's always pretty cool. If you ever get a chance to go, it's definitely worth the finding time, moving stuff in your schedule to make it happen. So,
well, here's one quick Masters question for you, who you have been before. I was at breakfast this morning with a person who's going, and he said, the one question I got and I've heard is when you listen to the Masters on TV, and it's, Nance is calling it, and
Sure.
you hear the wildlife in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to the Masters, and this guy had been, you never see any birds. So he said, "You're a local guy in Georgia. What's the deal?" And I just said, tongue in cheek, "Well, if I told you, I'd give away the big secret, and you wouldn't come back." And PETA would be all over me. So any insight to that?
My guess is they're overlaying that noise, making some background noise. I mean, because you're in the crowd, people aren't always talking, but there's crowd noise. Or also, what you don't ever hear on TV is there's a good amount of drones flying around doing TV stuff, and you hear the drones. So you don't obviously get that feedback and that noise through the TV. So,
got it. All right. Well,
maybe I'm just too busy eating all the great food too. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, enjoy that, and let's talk about crypto. What an interesting few weeks it's been since we last recorded. A lot of volatility and a lot of
volatility, and we appreciate everyone's patience too, because we've been sick and dealing with that. So it's been 3 weeks. So but we are going to keep this episode short. So we'll just jump in here. First one about the SEC chair vote. So this is, when Trump first got elected, I was like, nothing's going to happen to the SEC with regard to the crypto before the chair got in. And I've always heard it takes months and months, and that's been my experience. Well, it has taken months, but the acting SEC chair in the SEC has actually been getting stuff done in crypto. So I haven't been as antsy about this one getting in place. But the good news is Paul Atkins had his hearing in front of the committee late March. I think it was like 27th or 28th. And then that went seemingly pretty well. And he has, if everything stays to schedule, a floor vote potentially as early as this evening at 7 p.m. So this is on April the 9th. I don't see something materially changing at the SEC because he's there. It seems like they're already working down their path in their plan, which is great to see. But it'd be kind of nice to kind of get this one tied off with a bow and feel like we actually have full leadership, and admittedly like an extra, in this case, Republican voting or right-leaning commissioner. So then it would be certainly outweighing the sole remaining Democrat.
There've been a lot of announcements from the SEC, to your point, since the changeover in leadership from Gensler, and I think most people that are in the financial markets and that have worked in a regulated environment, right, the securities industry, the investment and asset management business, right, the news generally has been, from a regulatory standpoint, more positive to to the industry as far as fewer enforcement actions, less of this dragnet approach and enforcement, through fines, etc. They're still going to go after bad actors, as they should, but I think in terms of clarity and the direction and the leadership, I would expect, to your point, what he's approved, or I guess confirmed is
Mhm.
the right word.
Yeah.
It should be another, positive development for
Mhm.
crypto. As
Yeah.
he's indicated, he's going to be in favor of a lot of the things I think we're going to talk about today, stable
Mhm.
coins and you know
Yeah.
crypto not being securities, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even in his hearing in front of the banking committee, he reinforced that digital assets are a top priority for him at the SEC this year. He like made a point to say this year versus other years, and getting
Yeah,
workable rules and regulatory clarity for crypto in place. And again, the commissioner and the acting chair now have definitely already started some of that work. So it's great to kind of feel like I would imagine he feels like he's not having to clean up a mess that largely has already been done
yeah,
when it comes to crypto. So
yeah.
we'll see here this evening, and maybe next week when we chat, we can share some good news there. So
Hmm.
our next topic actually came out in the news this week. So Ripple acquired Hidden Road. Hidden Road is a prime broker that actually interfaces both with TradFi and with crypto. So they're kind of this, I guess, two-headed monster of sorts. And they apparently this deal's been in the works for a while. I don't know how long, but it's Brad Garlinghouse did mention that. And it's Hidden Road is a growing prime broker, but more specifically, they settle about $3 trillion a year in trades, so they are a good size.
Yeah, I'm curious if in the press release or what you were able to find, if Brad Garlinghouse of Ripple talked about is the intention to expand their offerings and their product lines and service lines. Because when I think about prime brokers, right, they want to basically serve the institutional asset management community, doing trading
Mhm.
and a variety of other services and products for, let's call it, just the fund managers, asset managers,
Right. Yeah.
across different assets.
Yeah. So I guess I'll answer your question, but I'm gonna answer something else first. So the total deal they're paying is 1.25 billion for Hidden Road. Um, it's a mixture of cash, XRP, and some Ripple stock. I do know, but at the end of the day, one of the reasons why they're looking, or Ripple was interested in Hidden Road, was they're going to use Ripple stablecoin as the counterparty settlement mechanism for all the trades within Hidden Road. So that's going to bring a ton of volume. I mean, just to give you perspective, the RLUSD stablecoin I think is like a $200-400 million market cap. So it's relatively small in the scope of stablecoins. Hidden Road settles $10 billion on a daily basis.
Okay.
So so
Yeah.
it could be a light switch moment of sorts for that particular stablecoin. Obviously, Ripple, the more money that's there, that is a revenue source for them with
Yeah.
where interest rates are at. So that could be pretty sizable over the long term.
Yeah. Well,
So,
taking that fourth headline down, we'll come back to this topic around
mhm,
stable coins,
yeah,
but yeah, stablecoins has kind of woven its way through this entire update, right?
yeah,
In the importance, and kind of, you don't do this deal unless you probably have confidence that
mhm,
we're going to see legislation. If you fear the SEC is going to deem these securities, right? So
mhm.
all this kind of is tied together. But
Absolutely.
a notable deal, right? One of the
Yeah.
largest in crypto
The
in,
largest,
in
I think,
history.
one top two or three
Yeah,
largest M&A deals in crypto ever. So,
right.
big deal. Ripple. People assume they're going public sometime soon. They can. Even today, I was listening to a podcast when they were talking about this particular deal, and Monica Long, a president at Ripple, was saying how they're looking at growing organically and inorganically, but growing their business. They don't have a reason to go public because they have liquidity. So in a strong balance sheet. So be interesting to see how this evolves. I guess the other half of what may be interesting about this is this Hidden Road. Ripple has ambitions to have a lot of the trades that need to settle that don't have great liquidity amongst them to have that happen on the XRP ledger, which would be a gigantic step forward for crypto. Even if it wasn't XRP, it'd be different. It doesn't matter. Crypto doesn't do this right now.
Yeah,
But XRP Ledger was designed to have this bridging mechanism built into it. So if you need to get from one inefficient thing to another inefficient thing, XRP would kind of be that connecting dot there. So that will take time, obviously, to develop and kind of get going there, and it probably quickly gets in the weeds. But it was a big. It kind of shocked me. I didn't expect Ripple to do this. Not that I should be expecting it either, but it was cool to kind of see them continue to ramp up their deals, and their deals continually get bigger. So I don't know if the next one after this is going to be even bigger, but it'll be entertaining if it is. So,
well, it goes back to, two things: commercial utility, right? And what's the application of these cryptocurrencies and their ledgers outside of what skeptics would say just meme coins and trading amongst just the crypto community. Clearly, this is a flag in the ground type of moment, right, where we can see the application of the blockchain technology applied to like a legit, like, real business, if you will, and then like an institutional one at that. So pretty cool. And also, like, just another, in a way, just another proof point that the technology does not have to apply just to single use case. Because I know we had always talked about XRP in the context of like the Swift network and settlement payments, right? And sort of disrupting the notion of going in and wiring money using Western Union or more of a traditional way to get money from country A to country B. Now you see, the technology being used in a completely different but meaningful way.
Right. But to tie that back together, though, as there becomes more liquidity because of the hidden roads, assume they get back on the XRP ledger and they're doing all the things there, that liquidity is available amongst the XRP ecosystem. So then it makes it easier for their payments business. So these things will definitely be a flywheel effect, assuming they get rolling. So but I imagine we'll end up talking about this one multiple times over the next year or so as they kind of, it's the deal's not officially done. I think they think a month or two in regulatory approval, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be an issue from everything that I've read. So we will jump to our next one. This one caught me off guard. There's a new crypto podcast out there called Crypto in America. It is run by Eleanor Tourette. She used to be at Fox Business, and she made a bit of a name for herself by being a journalist that was curious about crypto, especially the SEC Ripple case. And it was, I guess, sharing that information on Fox Business on the TV station. Now she's kind of done her own thing, and she's had this exclusive thing that she launched, or not, that she basically was able to break. So there's an attorney. He goes on Twitter. He goes by Meta Lawman, but his name is James Murphy. He's been kind of hovering around the XRP case and would not the XRP, the Ripple case, not the XRP case, but he would kind of chime in. And he seems like a smart guy that understands law and kind of the crossroads of crypto. But he has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security. Apparently, they did some research and some investigations, and he thinks that they know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, the creator of Bitcoin. Part of the allure of Bitcoin for Bitcoin people is they don't know who the creator is. It's like this mysterious person. If they ever were to be found, that person technically, if they still have keys to their wallet, hold 20% of Bitcoin. So it's like a gigantic number in billions of dollars. I would imagine every Bitcoiner would say they never want to find out who this person is. They want that mystery to be there. When I saw this thing where he's suing the Department of Homeland Security, who he thinks they believe they know who it is. If this comes true and we find out who this is, or the group of people, holy crap! Like, that seems like an existential threat to Bitcoin from a price perspective. That would be interesting to see how the market digests, and it's probably not a good thing. So
I was going to say there's some discovery motion, I'm sure, that's been filed, right, with Homeland Security. So wants to see information that they have, or what's the scope of their investigation.
The scope, I guess, is right now, at least if I read this correctly, is centering around, he has another attorney named Brian Field who specializes in FOIA requests, that he is helping him with this request. You have an administration that seems to want to,
well, they released the
JFK motor a little bit,
right? Yeah,
at least selectively so far. It would be interesting to kind of see what happens here. And then you have the added dynamic: the Trumps or the Trump sons are doing their Bitcoin thing, their Bitcoin mining. It could negatively affect them. Like, how does all this, how do all these pieces of spaghetti tie together, I guess, is the question. So,
yeah. Well, when I saw the headline, I thought, man, this is like a Dateline Friday night unmasking Satoshi special. Robert has identified like a new line of work. But nevertheless, like news. So we'll have to cover it. And like you said, we probably don't have time for it today, but maybe on a future episode, we'll have to play out what your, potential, what's the theory out, what's the working theory out there if in fact it turns out that this is, some super smart computer programmer, sitting in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the country that's created this. What plays out, but maybe that's the hook to get people to listen to the
next episode. There we go. Yeah. Awesome. We will see.
We have to keep going though, because we got to get you to Augusta. So the SEC, stable coins are not securities. Music to the industry's ears, right? We talked about stable coins earlier.
And they were very specific, which I appreciate, because the SEC for the last 4 years around crypto has been very ambiguous. But in this case, they said fully reserved, liquid, dollar-backed stable coins are not securities. Yeah. And people wonder, like, why aren't all stable coins that? Well, there technically are stable coins that are what they call algorithmic, that actually follow crypto prices and try to like balance it there. Those always have seemed like a bad idea to me. Some of those have blown up in very unfun ways. But this was cool to see the SEC do this. And it's interesting. You don't normally see agencies trying not to get turf. The SEC has been giving up a lot of turf, assuming that they would have kept it had they done the otherwise. But it is cool to kind of see.
So the stable coins are not securities so long as they fit a specific, they meet a specific set of requirements, like pegged effectively 1-to-1 to the US dollar.
Or whatever currency. But I think the SEC probably only cares about dollars, would be my guess. And we'll our second to last topic here, we'll get into this. Really does interface into the legislation that's being worked on. But it does seem like things are getting cleaned up so that legislation can just kind of roll out and everyone is in a good spot.
Okay.
So that was a quick one. This next one is a little bit of a head scratcher to me. So Circle is the issuer of the stablecoin USDC, and it's the second largest one. It's billions of market cap, probably 50, 60 billion, something like that. I haven't looked in a while. And they filed to go public. They're based in New York. They're doing all the things. So a lot of disclosures are coming out about them. And the one that blew me away, or actually a couple of things, they as a business spend $250 million a year on compensation for their employees. They have 800 employees.
Wow.
Okay. So interesting. They're paying their employees pretty well, or at least some of them. But if you contrast this with, it is a known kind of number, how many employees Tether has. So Tether is a magnitude bigger, not magnitude, probably 2 or 3 times bigger than USDC. They were based in the Caymans. I think they're moving to, I don't know, we talked about this, El Salvador or somewhere. Right. But Tether has 100 employees. They're a bigger business that has 100 employees. Circle has 800. And I'm like, okay, why is there a delta of 700 employees? Like, it's a huge difference. And I have wondered, is this the difference of running a compliant business and a non-compliant business? Or like regulation, like what is this, the regulatory tax that we're feeling and seeing this number? I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get that answer, but it's as more of their business happens, or as they get further along in the IPO process, more stuff will come out.
Yeah, we'll learn, right? Because one of the things we talked about on an earlier update was the profit per employee. People speculated
at Tether,
Tether, because they are moving their headquarters to El Salvador, and there isn't as much transparency and there isn't as much information. You just have to kind of piece together, based on various news reports and somewhat speculation. Stablecoin Circle going through the S1 process has now filed, and people can go out through the SEC, pull the document, read about their business, right, and see a lot more. I am super curious what the bigger financial institutions right there in their backyard are thinking about this business. And I have to think these bigger banks, bigger asset managers, if this business proves to be like Ripple's doing, got a stable coin, right? We've talked about that for some time. As you start seeing the players come to market, I got to think, we haven't heard the last of Circle, and something tells me Uncle Larry, Grandpa Larry, he's in the background. There's something cooking up.
Right.
You know,
I mean,
BlackRock is not one to let these big giant asset pools and businesses just be,
encroach on their turf. Absolutely.
right. Yeah,
So
not
what's
anti BlackRock, right? And have
correct. I
access to
mean,
the platform. It's just, these are monumental type of
mhm.
things that are happening. I mean, again, they filed to go public. Ripple's, got this activity with Hidden Road. I mean, these are announcements that are obviously they're things that we're going to talk about in future episodes. But it's just fascinating to see. And there's going to be more M&A activity to come.
Yeah, and it would not shock me if they get scooped up, because my guess is this is not a hot stock when it goes out the door.
Right.
Specifically, if you start digging into some of these details, and we won't go through all of them, but like their basically market cap has not grown for the last 3 years
Right.
of the stable coin.
Yeah.
Rates are not going to go higher, unlikely. So their return is probably at the peak it's going to be, unless they can grow their whole market cap of the stablecoin itself. And they have an arrangement with Coinbase, because Coinbase uses them as the exclusive stablecoin right now. That roughly, I think, is like 40% of their Circle revenue goes to Coinbase.
Wow.
So like, I wouldn't say they're in a corner, but like, it just doesn't seem like an amazing like business. It's cool what they built, but like, it doesn't seem like investors are going to be like, oh my gosh, they're going to buy this like hotcakes.
Yeah,
So,
I have a hard time thinking this ends up in a Vanguard,
right.
fund or some mutual fund, right? Because they're looking for, they're looking for something different. This, I don't know. Again, speculation, just feels more like an acquisition candidate.
Right.
You get the technology, and 740 people are looking for work.
All of a sudden, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because people are speculating people are speculating that they are only going to be valued at like $5 billion. So like that's like chump change to all these other, entrenched industrial or financial players, that they could make an acquisition, all of a sudden have a stablecoin business that they could sell through their own channels. So we will see.
Well, with the next headline, the stablecoin legislation progressing, it would make sense that somebody out there who's looking to make a move in crypto or be active in this space, now that the SEC's announced that stablecoins are not securities, the legislation's progressing, you start to see the chessboard clear up a little bit, and the pieces are in place for a bigger financial institution to say, this is now the time. There's more regulatory clarity. Now's the time to make a move. Circle goes out and get leverage because it's like, hey, we're going to go public. We're going to keep moving down that road, or you can take us out. Just write us a big check.
Absolutely. And admittedly, the first firm that comes to mind is JP Morgan. So it seems like right up.
So stablecoin legislation is progressing out of committee more, or still in committees? And
so there is a House bill and a Senate bill. One is called the Stable Act. One is called the Genius Act. They functionally were trying to skin the cat two different ways. They've come together. There was a 13-hour session in the Financial Services Committee for to basically reconcile the differences between these two bills. It made it through the committee with bipartisan support. I cannot tell you how shocked I am about the bipartisan part of that sentence. It was 32-17 with 6 Democrats voting for it. And it is now ready, to kind of move to the next stage, which I believe has to go back. Now they have this new version of each bill. Each portion of the House has to, each portion of Congress, has to go and vote on it. And then it would be on its way. Like at the end of the day, Trump, back a month and a half ago, had said that he wanted to have stablecoin legislation on his desk by the August recess. And you know what? Outside of the world blowing up and this terror stuff really dragging on and getting a lot of Congress's attention, I think there's really a fighting chance that we have our first sort of crypto regulation, albeit just stablecoin, by August. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I think human nature, right? Some of these folks probably realize, man, when I go back to speak in, my local district, there's so much frustration and disappointment and anger and uncertainty. There are folks in DC that want to work, right? They want to do things, and this is a piece of legislation, stable coins. It's kind of a momentous. Again, I use that word again. It's a point in time. This industry won't. You won't be able to look back if you're that congressman or woman. You're not going to be able to look back and say, man, I was a part of something that really opened the door and opened the floodgates to something that ended up being pretty transformational, I would argue. And
100%.
maybe they want to be a part of that, right? Maybe they want to be a part of that, and be in it. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that there are some Democrats that got on board. And I
Yeah.
would be surprised, to your point, if we see a lot more momentum out of this over the next month, 2 months.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the most surprising part maybe was just that there was 17 people, I assume mostly Democrats, maybe all, that voted against it. Like, of all the things that you could be voting for and against, like where's the dog in the fight here? Maybe it's Elizabeth Warren and her crew, who are very much entrenched in the traditional finance and banking part. But I don't know. Well, hopefully we have some more news here in the next couple of weeks about this, and we can continue talking about it. So. Our last topic is from the FDIC. So it seemed like every agency underneath the sun in the Biden administration had some rule that was like basically like we had to figure out how to kill crypto. And the FDIC had one where it basically told banks that they couldn't interface or bank crypto customers without first asking the FDIC for permission. They dropped that rule. And what didn't make it in these notes, I mean, I guess it could be our last bullet point after this, is the DOJ even had a thing said we would target crypto companies and basically suspect that they might be breaking the law. And so they have said that they would be stopping that policy as well. So, in some sense, the sky continues to get a little bit more clear and less clouds in it for crypto. At some point, we're only really waiting for legislation, and that could really be pretty entertaining to see what that does. So,
yeah, I mean, this sometimes you have 2 or 3 weeks, and you have these updates, and you kind of take away that okay, there is actually some positive momentum. I mean, it's been a super volatile time in the equity markets. Look at today; it's been a very volatile time in crypto, right, over the last few months. So there are, and we've been saying this, Robert, like there have been things happening in the background. And the headlines around legislation, stablecoin, the path forward looks a little bit more clear. More M&A activity. We talked about that today. That's because there's more confidence. So yeah, it's interesting to see all this stuff sort of happening. We'll certainly not be 3 weeks before the next update, but nevertheless, like a good update on the industry, and we'll have to see just what transpires over the next period with the geopolitical and macro environment, but certainly happening, all of that happening while crypto's industry is taking a step hopefully forward.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a wrap. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. To stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Tea Time Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.